Feather sticks. Okay, feather sticks are made out of sticks. Pretty amazing, right? That means at all times, they're always available. Very cool. Now, that means any season, any condition. That's very important. It could be brutal conditions, you're always going to find them, which is a good thing because it's very valuable. It's not just a toy, it's not something that looks cool, it's a critical tool to live in the woods. There's a duality to them because they can be tinder, the initial tinder to get started, a stick, thumb thick. Not something you think of when you think of tinder. You think cattail, you think always of a birch bark, a stick. Also, duality is kindling. Because you make a feather stick, after you get a little flame going, for whatever the means you got there, you put on one of those, it amplifies the flame drastically. You go from a little candle flame, now you have an 8-inch flame that's roaring along, and it's massively bigger than it was. So that's incredibly important. The best way is to use 2 to 3 because it's almost like a flash tinder. It's going to go up, it's going to go fast, and you have to harness that amplified heat, amplified space of radiation quickly. So you throw another one on there, another one on there. You're almost like choking it out with feathers. And it's just going to get triple the size, triple the heat really fast. Which is incredible because now we're talking all through the seasons, talking through all conditions. You can take something small and weak and turn it into a blaze with very small effort. It could be in a rainforest. It could be in a blizzard. I can also use it like a tinder bundle. So now, instead of being spark-driven fire, it's now primitive-driven fire. So as long as I can make an ember, I can make a fire. And that's a huge one because in all seasons, in all conditions, finding a tinder bundle is not an easy thing to do. Anyone who's tried to do that on the fly finds out real quick they keep a spare one in their kit for those days because it's very adverse and hard to do. But it isn't because you just make a feather stick, put some cattail right in the middle of it, there's your tinder bundle, done. Continue on, make your ember, whether it be by flint and steel, whether it be by fire plow, bow drill, hand drill, make an ember, drop it in the middle, off you go. I carry cattail in my kit for that, just so no matter what, because that's like the most amazing initial stage of a tinder bundle. Tinder bundle has multiple stages, 3 stages. First stage is the finest stuff right in the middle. And that is gonna take an ember, make it bigger, and it acts like what a feather stick does to a flame. It takes a little small ember and makes it huge, magnifies its heat, right? Then you need your material, that's the next stage past that, and it has more, it's like grass and whatever it is. In this case, it's a feather stick. So you make them fine, and it's like little fine pieces of grass. Now it looks like a tinder bundle if you make them fine enough. And then the outside of a tinder bundle is the structure. For a feather stick, that would be like the handle, because the structure is what holds the bundle together, so it's not falling in between your fingers. So for a feather stick, it'd be like the stick is the 3rd step. The 2nd step would be all the curls, and you put the cattail in the middle as the 1st step. So it's a true tinder bundle.
As an accelerant.
Yeah, to grow.
There's a term for the stuff that explodes like that, dandelion fluff and cattail.
Flash tinder.
Flash tinder, yes.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Okay. Now, next is about the conditions and seasons. In tough scenarios, it's like a secret weapon that makes it easier. So if you're in a really hard up situation, feather sticks are your solution, because what we do when we're in those situations, we're constantly trying to find a solution. When I was in Vancouver, it rained twice a day. Everything was rotten, actually. It wasn't dead standing, it was rotten standing. And I had to cut down trees this big and get to the middle, and there'd be a wet layer. And only the heart was dry. And the first 1.5 inches of the wood all the way around was completely soaked. I couldn't burn that until I had an ember base. So at least a half-hour burn, then that stuff will burn. If not, we'll put it out. So here I am, picking a log to get down to actual dry material, because everything else, you can't go get twigs, can't go get anything, because everything, literally, like, I can walk up to a tree, grab the moss, squeeze it, and it just, water comes dripping out. Everything is soaked. Everything's rotten and dying. Feathersticks was my solution. I did not struggle to make fire at all when I was there. I just made feathersticks from the middle, what I could find. I struck a spark right on to the most delicate of curls. I take a little handful of them. Now there's my little flame. I then would have 2 extra. I would take that one that I took, the delicate ones, lay it on top of that flame, magnify it, put 2 more over it, and take all those little splits that I made from the inside of the log, and off I go. After that goes for a while, I put the wet stuff on there every day, no problem. You don't want it to be dry rot, because it's just going to crumble. When it goes to separate, you're making it very thin, and if it's a little rotten and crumbly, instead it just turns to dust, basically. It falls apart. Now another thing is you want to carve on a down curve, because then my blade can run right along. There's a hump right here. It goes up instead of down. So when my blade comes here, it's going to continue in that direction, and it's going to fall off every time right there. I'm not going to be able to do this with my knife, but I can do this with my knife very easily. You just ride the wave. Like at the top of the wave, it's going to come off. So I can see on this stick, I can make curls from about here to here. If I flip it over, I can make curls from here to here. So it's the opposite of the other one, right? So if I had to, I could do both if I was really hard up. That's the details that count. I can make more curls if I needed to. Another thing is, you might notice there's a knot at the end, and there was a knot at the other end where I broke it off from the other stick. You don't want to use knots. Knots destroy what you're carving. You'll be carving, there's a knot, it's gone. Whatever you're carving is gone. If it doesn't, if it does hold on, which happens sometimes, everything can happen. Right? The fact that you're going to hit that spot that catches your blade every single time, it changes your cadence, your tempo, changes the angle of your knife. It causes your smooth actions to run into a speed bump. And of course, that's when problems happen. You just get this little kink and keep going. Then you realize you really have to just go in between the knots. Alright, so the technique, you want to be, well, there's a few ways. You want to be light for light curls. I mean, they'll be feather light, you can see through them, put sunlight through them. If you have a real light hand, you're barely, it's like sharpening. When you're sharpening, and you get to when it's as sharp as possible, whatever technique you're using, it's like whisper light. If you're using a rod, it's whisper light. You're barely touching that metal. If you push hard, it's too much, right? At that point, it's like as light as a feather, and it'll be the sharpest blade you've ever seen. Same thing with feather stick. When you're making a feather really light, it will be, 40 curls, and it'll be so small that you can just move it around, and gravity will rip it apart. They're so delicate, and those are the ones you just throw a spark on, and off you go. Right? Heavy, when you dig in, but now it's like carving. It's still going to do the same thing, but it's going to be more robust, thicker, and it's going to be more like fuel instead of tinder, more like kindling, right? So that brings up another point. Maybe some people make a feather stick for the first batch, make a feather stick that is a whole bunch of light curls during adverse conditions. When they know it needs to work, they make a feather stick all light stuff. Because even if I have almost nothing, this will work. But they know it's going to go up like that and be gone. So then the next one, they'll do half of one, half of the other. The third one, they'll do all hard, and they'll put it in that order, right? And that last one will burn longer than all the others stages. When you're in the worst conditions, those are the details you have to be mindful of. Long strokes. Long strokes. The longer the better. The longer the better. If you're using a small stroke, you're only going to have the ability to curl an inch. So you might get a little wave. You know, sometimes you see it's just like a wave, right? Like when snow just kind of does that, the tongue. Feathersticks can look like that. Like in the Boy Scout books, they call it a fuzz stick. And it looks like a guy just pushed his knife in half an inch. And he kind of rotated the stick around. That's from lack of length. Because the longer you carve, the more it goes, more it goes, more it goes. That's how I get my feather sticks, you know, to be like turkey legs. You know, I mean, they're like thighs. They're huge, right? From length. Okay. Yeah, so mind the ridges when you're carving a long distance. Because sometimes in the grain, there'll be a ridge. It'll look like this, but in the middle here, the tree will just do that, just in its growth. It'll still have the same shape. And when you get to that, you'll probably lose a couple. That next one, dig in underneath it and do a hard one. And like force it and cut across the grain. You'd be like, this is what we're doing instead. You know, and so you have to kind of work with the material to make it happen. You have to force it. You can't just be nice and gentle and I'm gonna do, you know, what you want to do. Unfortunately, you have to kind of manhandle it. Okay, so for use. So for tinder, you can do ferro ignition, and like I mentioned earlier, right on the curls. And for a tinder bundle, any ember, like I mentioned, bow drill, hand drill, char cloth. You can do amadou, chaga, whatever you want to do. Char cattail, if you want to do natural char cloth, right? You just char cattail, put a spark, put that inside the it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. It doesn't matter what makes the ember. Kindling, again, that's for explosive growth. 2 to 3 at a time, usually in a teepee is how I do it. That grows the flames. I can start with a flame many ways. I can take birch bark, scrape it, strike it with a ferro rod. I have a little candle flame. I can take a match. The most amazing invention probably of this dominant culture was the match. I mean, it's a dead material, and now it's on fire. That's like mind-blowing. Really, you just think about that. It's mind-blowing. Really, it's mind-blowing. Okay, what else? Oh, right. Okay. Last one. Rebuilding a fire. So if your fire burns down and you're like scrambling, oh man, I was out doing XYZ, I come back. It was really hard to get that started. I'm in a rainforest or in a blizzard. It's dying. What do I do? Oh my God. I can't go run out and grab my kindling over and it's twigs and it's just big to do. I got a minute. Grab the nearest stick. Make even just 4 or 5, put it on top. It's already starting to smoke a little. Keep going, put a little more. Then make a real feather stick. At least now it's like doing something, and then you can put that right on top of the hot source. And then your fire's back. And now you can just do your thing, right? So you can rebuild your fire, rekindle it if it's dead. Which brings me to the other option is the next morning. But the next morning, one of the things I like to do, I get great pleasure doing. Search around, move the white powder around. Oh, there's a hot spot. You know, if I put my hand directly in there, I'm gonna get 3rd-degree burn. I'll have to go in 4 or 5 inches, but it's there, right? Carve a nice feather stick, a really fine one. Put it right on top of there. Shift it around a little bit, because as you shift it, you're agitating, and the heat, the radiation that's in there is gonna move around. All of a sudden, you're on your way. It will just start smoking and it will just ignite on its own. Put 2 more on it, carry on as you were. I like to feel it with my thumb. Ooh, hear that crack already? See how dangerous that is? Ooh. Gotta be careful with this one. So I go down with my thumb first to make sure that I'm at the bottom, because if I'm off a little bit, when I do that, it's gonna twist. See that? I think I'm there. Obviously we can see I'm not, obviously, but now if I push, it's gonna move on its own. Right to the spot, that's the bottom of the valley every time. If I go here, oh, I think I got it. Let me just try it, let me push. Instead of pushing with my knife, pushing my thumb, it lines it up. That's a huge one. For some reason, no one brings that up, but to me, it's key. And then I just grab a spot. I'm gonna go light, especially at first. Testing the wood. Now when I first carve, it creates 2 ridges. So now I'm going to go to this ridge. See? Now I'm going to go, now that ridge, that carving created a ridge to the right and a ridge to the left. I'm going to go back to the second ridge though. Alright, now I have another ridge in the middle where they met. The ridges make the finest curls. Now angle of knife, if I go straight on, the curl's not going to go to the side, it's going to just stack on top of itself. See that? It just curled right on top of itself, just like a fiddlehead. If I angle my knife, it's going to go way off to the side. Can you guys see that? You can see that, right? Okay. I tend to not do the opposite. It does the same thing, it goes that way. I tend to not do that because I tend to cut a lot of curls off when I do that. Because I dig my belly and my blade right into what I've already created, and I've lost a lot. You can do it if you use the front. Go the opposite way. See how I went this way? Okay. I don't like to rush this. Take my time. Now when I pull the blade out, pull straight out. And I won't cut off curls. Because essentially what I'm doing is I'm going into a layer, I'm picking it up, I'm making it curl, I'm underneath every layer of every other curl. Come back and I dip underneath and I go underneath that last one I just made. If I come up, I'm gonna sever those and lose. But if I just go underneath and slide out, continue, then I don't get breakage.
So it's difficult.
Alright, and then you can put your feather stick on there and off you go.